what are your thoughts?
Well, I have a lot of the same questions that you all were asking. And so I, based on the answers that we heard, I think one of my thoughts is, what did we just spend 6 months waiting for? I think that there's still a lot of unknowns, and I'm not quite convinced that the government has done their homework in truly understanding the implications of these policies that they've just introduced today. From what I see, we waited 6 months and we got three main results. Decreased investment in the renewable energy sector, an increased amount of red tape to build renewable energy across Alberta, and I'm worried that that's going to result in increased energy costs at a time when Albertans are really concerned about affordability.
But this idea that she's saying, look, people don't want their viewscapes interfered with, is that a legitimate concern in your eyes?
You know, the idea of viewscapes has been discussed in land use planning for a really long time. And I think one of the reasons why it's so challenging is because it's very subjective. What one person thinks is beautiful or disruptive to a viewscape might not be the same thing as what another person thinks. I also worry that, you know, I saw that same post of that map of if we buffer all of the protected areas in southern Alberta by 35 kilometers, there is very little land left. So we think this idea of viewscapes kind of just puts a lot of pressure on the eastern slopes and the Rocky Mountains as the most beautiful places in Alberta. But you talk to anybody who lives out in the grasslands or the badlands, there's a lot of beautiful places in Alberta that aren't near the mountains. So how do we distinguish which viewscapes are being impacted? Is 35 kilometers enough or not enough? Maybe some people think windmills are actually a pretty thing on the landscape too, right? So the reason why viewscapes is not a part of land use planning is because it's too subjective to be effective. And I think that that's the case here too.
You know, what would be the NDP positions that the government's want?
Well, you know, I think what we really need to focus on is diversifying and increasing investment in our renewable energy sector is not a nice to have. Everybody around the world is increasing renewable energy development as a way of diversifying energy, diversifying economic revenue. We are falling behind by creating a whole bunch of red tape to encourage that kind of investment in the province. And so, you know, I think what we should have done is assess what the existing regulations were and how those needed to be improved. And that did not require a moratorium on renewable energy development. I'm a little concerned we've wasted 6 months of time and lost a whole bunch of investment revenue potential. And now we just have to wait to see how this policy makes up for that.
Do you have a follow-up, Mark? Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much of a threat you think renewable development currently is to agricultural land in Alberta.
Well, I think with all things, it all comes down to land use planning, right? So you'll remember we have the land use framework, the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan. These documents were meant to sort of define what parts of the landscape might be most appropriate for certain activities. There's no doubt that agricultural landscapes need to be preserved and protected for the ability of producers to produce food for all of us. Native grasslands also need to be preserved and protected for a variety of reasons. There were regulations in place to help make sure that municipal districts and municipalities could make decisions about renewables within the context of protecting agricultural landscapes and native grasslands. So those kinds of regulations already existed, which was one of the reasons why I was unclear why we needed a moratorium in the first place. I think we can all agree that making sure that happy cows eat happy grass and produce great beef is always going to be a priority. Agriculture is a big part of our landscape, and it's a big part of our cultural identity as Albertans. I don't see how that has to be exclusive to renewable energy development. We can definitely have both.
You're saying that that it's redundant, but if you can clarify that. But my other question was just about, what do you think about the different standards that are being applied here for renewables versus the immense cleanup required for oil and gas?
Yeah, that was one of my biggest questions too, and you asked the Premier that, and I wasn't satisfied with that answer either. I do find this to be really hypocritical. Are we going to ask all industrial activity to meet these same standards around viewscapes and buffers around protected areas and you know, crown land, and are we going to ask other industrial development to make sure that livestock grazing is still maintained and and crop potential is still maintained. So I do struggle with the hypocrisy of this particular series of policies being directed towards renewables and not necessarily towards other industrial practices on the landscape. But sorry, what was your question about the redundancy part?
Oh,
I don't think I understood the
no,
question.
the limitations of requiring any kind of analysis before building renewables on class, whatever. Sorry, I don't know, 1 or 2 land.
Yeah.
Are you saying that that requirement is redundant because there's already land use requirements in place that would prevent that?
In some municipalities, yes. In some municipal districts, there were. I don't know about the whole province. I just know about the MDs that I've been speaking with. They already had the tools necessary to accept or reject renewable development proposals within the MD prior to the moratorium coming into place. So I'm not sure if there will be redundancy in policy or if this set of policies will replace what was there previously. But those are some of the questions that I have too. And I think, again, is demonstrative that the government hasn't really done their homework on this.